We have a lot of content today, and it's very exciting to have this presentation here at the museum. I'm Benton Jones. I'm the Director of Art here at the Cape Cod Museum of Art. And welcome to the in-depth dive with curator Bill Evaul on the life and art of Richard Pepitone, as we discover together the inspiring journey of this prominent Provincetown artist. This talk is in conjunction with the exhibition Portrait of an Artist, Richard Pepitone Retrospective, which runs through May 19th, so it's not too many more days left. I want to thank Richard's daughter, Michelle Pepitone, who was instrumental in pulling together all the artwork and the collectors and was a driving force in this production. And of course, curator Bill Evaul, and the many and the many friends, collectors of Richard's artwork, and a number of them are here today. Portrait of an Artist displays over 80 of Richard Pepitone's artworks, including sculptures made from bronze, polyester resin, birch bark, copper, glass vessels, stained glass panels, glass jewelry, prints, monoprints, paintings, graphite drawings, paper collage, mixed media, ceramic plates, and vessels. Nothing stopped Richard from trying something new. Pepitone's work in the exhibition came from 28 sources, including the Cape Cod Museum of Art's permanent collection, the Provincetown Art Association and Museum, and Michelle Pepitone herself, and 25 independent collectors. She said, having my father's artwork in so many places with so many wonderful people keeps his legacy and memory alive. I'm grateful that I have stayed in contact with many of his friends and colleagues who have now become my friends too. She would have loved to have been with us today. She's in Pittsburgh, and there have been many trips back and forth in conjunction with this exhibition, so we're videotaping it for her, but she had to forego being here in person. A limited number of Richard Pepitone's books, his memoir, made in 2017, titled Gone for the Day, are available in our bookstore. 100% of the sales of the first 100 copies of the memoir will go directly to the Center for Coastal Studies in Provincetown, and that is made possible by a donation from Michelle Pepitone. So thank you, Michelle, for that generosity as well. Richard inspired so many, including myself. I met him as a 20-something out of art school, moved to Cape Cod. We had a mutual mentor, Donald Ballou, who was a materials master, and Richard was learning how to kiln form and fuse glass, and I was learning how to car paint on fiberglass. So we kind of met tangentially at Don's house. But Richard was always gravitating to those with expertise in every field, and that's why you hear about so many different materials that he worked with. He was, an insatiable curiosity. He just loved to make things, and he had a lot of drive. He was brutally honest, which was really refreshing. If he didn't think you were living up to your potential, he would let you know about that. And he also sometimes had a hot temper, standing up for those not in the room. He lived very much in the present, which was a great example for all of us. With that approach to life, he knew exactly that when you were finished with his critique or his compliment, that there would be nothing held back and you could move forward. He poured all his energy, his money, his passion into his art. But sometimes he would be frustrated because he would be surrounded by all of his creative objects, and so he would be angry at the collectors for not collecting. He would be he would threaten never to make anything ever again, and then you'd show up the next day and he would have a whole nother body of work and a new material. So so I love and I miss Richard. I don't think there'll ever be another like him. So let's hear from Bill Evaul. Bill Evaul studied painting and printmaking at Syracuse University School of Art and Pratt Institute, with graduate seminars at the Whitney Museum of Art. He came to Provincetown in 1970 as a painting fellow at the Fine Arts Work Center. While living in New York, Evaul further developed his printmaking skills by working at Solo Press, doing contract printing for artists, and teaching lithography at Pratt Graphic Center. As a contributing writer for Print Review and other magazines, he produced reviews and scholarly articles, including an important historical research paper entitled The Provincetown Printers, Genesis of a Unique Woodcut Tradition, which helped in the revival of the obscure and nearly lost technique of single block white line printmaking. Evaul's work has been exhibited or collected by numerous museums, including the Zimmerli Museum of Art at Rutgers University, the Georgia Museum of Art, the Sunrise Museum, the Kresge Art Museum, the Provincetown Art Association and Museum, and the Pilgrim Monument and Provincetown Museum, as well as the Cape Cod Museum of Art. Evaul was a recent recipient of the 2020 Cape Cod Museum of Art Muse Artist Award for his contributions to the Cape Cod arts community as an artist, educator, historian, and curator. A one-person exhibition of his artwork titled Song and Dance at the Cape Cod Museum of Art followed in the same year. As an educator, Bill Evaul periodically presents lectures, workshops at a variety of institutions such as the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art, the Georgia Museum of Art in Athens, Georgia, the Sunrise Art Museum in Charleston, West Virginia, Syracuse University School of Art, and the Zimmerli Art Museum, and others, as well as numerous local arts and historical institutions on Cape Cod and Massachusetts. Please join me in welcoming Bill Evaul.
Thank you, Benton. Thank you. That's really, I don't even know that guy. I'd like to meet him someday. Well, Richard Pepitone continues to be an inspiration for all of us, and we're going to hear a little bit about him today and see some of his work. When I was doing this presentation, writing it up, and of course I've known him for almost 50 years, and yet I started having thousands of questions. Where is he? I want to call him up. I want to go see him and answer these questions. But I didn't, he wasn't there, so we're going to have to do it without him. But this is the entry to this exhibition that's upstairs. And the one thing I like about this is that it represents three phases of his work. You know, the far right, Sorrow, which is like the plaster sculpture, which was one of his earliest media and oldest works of art. The oars are more mid-career, and then the reflection print is a very late career. So I've got that triad going on as an introduction. And this is the introduction to the exhibition, where we have tried to get one of his super early works, and it was very difficult. There's not much remaining, but there was a tiny drawing that he did when he was a young artist in New York, and then his self-portrait, which he continued to use himself as a motif throughout his career, and then of course the oars. This was one with the egg, which to me represented the fertility of the idea of his representation there. So, and just to keep me on track, he's going to be looking over my shoulder today. Yeah, this is Richard when he was a child, baby, you know, and that's his mom, and he's still watching. And this is Richard thinking about getting into trouble. is still watching. And this is Richard with the gang of kids. He's trying to figure out where he can steal her cookies, and and this is kind of his earliest, one of his earliest mature works, which he editioned it and reiterated it and made it into different media. But but I'm going to read to you some of the ideas about this, which will hopefully correspond to the visuals, and I might jump back and forth. But what I'm reading is part of an article that I wrote for the art guide last summer when he died, and now I'm expanding it for Provincetown Arts for this summer. So gives you a little idea about my take on him. So a small card was posted on the bulletin board at the Fine Arts Work Center, and it caught my eye. It said, "Sculptor seeks studio assistant, $5 an hour." This was in the early 70s, mind you, so carpenter was only getting $3.50 an hour, so $5. Yeah. My fellowship stipend was good, but not quite enough to make ends meet, so I called the number and soon found myself working for the sculptor, Richard Pepitone. This was in the beginning of a nearly 50-year relationship. Although my studio work with him was brief, we remained friends and colleagues, continuing to support each other right to the end. At that time, Richard Pepitone was making casts of live models in plaster, making molds from the plaster negatives, and then casting figures and fragments of figures in polyester resin. This was a laborious process, and he handled every step of the way with a meticulous craftsmanship and artistic vision. Clearly, I was working with a fiercely determined artist in full command of his vision. But where did he come from, and how did he get here? What was his background? Well, lots of these questions are answered in this memoir, Gone for the Day. But that wouldn't be published until 2015, so... but it's a must-read since it reveals a lot of the vulcanizing forces that work on him, that forces that shape the man and the artist. He did share with me many of his stories of cutting school, wandering through the Metropolitan Museum of Art and other museums, and he probably benefited more from that than anything his old schools provided. Of course, one thing, this is the resin, like a resin piece that I could have polished for him. I don't know. Of course, experience is one thing, but it takes innate skill to make good use of the experience. Imagine a 6-year-old child who memorizes all the subway and bus stops and routes while traveling around the city with his parents, and then, when they're not looking, striking out on his own at the first chance he can get. A native intelligence and a curiosity and appreciation for his environment and a determination to learn more, you begin to get the idea of what Richard was like. His parents were basic, salt-of-the-earth people, and the good-hearted Italian immigrants who landed right in the middle of America's Great Depression. Overwhelmed with their survival, they were, like many families at that time, forced to take advantage of the social services program to place their first 3 children into temporary care until they could afford to bring them home. The program didn't take children over 5, and Richard, being the youngest, got to stay home. But both parents were working and struggling, and so he was left alone a lot, and that's when his wanderlust was ignited. Now, kindergarten was the high point of Richard's education. He loved everything about school, from the scale of the little furniture, the snacks, the afternoon naps on the blankets on the floor, and most importantly, arts and crafts time. He took to that instantly and excelled. His teachers doted on him and set him up with his own little workstation, introduced him to painting and crafting, and for the first time in his life he had received praise and encouragement. One of his earliest projects was a little house, complete with furniture and wallpaper and all details, anything that he could think of, he created. But when he went home and decided to set up a little workstation in the kitchen, his parents said, "What are you doing with that? Why are you making a big mess? Why don't you go out and play?" And so he didn't kind of get that nurturing at home that he might have, should have. But nonetheless, he persevered. Well, so now it's time for him to go to elementary school, and he was short for his age. He had slurred speech, kind of a lisp, and he had a little bit of hard of hearing issues. All that added up to make him a big target for the bullies, and the teachers didn't have a lot of patience for him. And so he hated going to school, so he just stopped going to school, and he'd pretend to go to school, but he'd walk all over the place, and then walk all over the city, and then like he'd roam around and looking and learning, though. And his curiosity, appreciation, and observation of the natural world, like Fort Greene Park or Jones Beach or Coney Island, right? He learned about the animal worlds, and from Prospect Park Zoo, the humanistic worlds. He was a keen observer of people in the street, in the bars, and the diners, and carnivals, and all that. And the aesthetic world, too. The Brooklyn Museum, the Metropolitan Museum, and, of course, vaudeville and movie theaters. He knew every one. There's lots of great stories about this in the book, Gone for the Day. But you'll begin to understand a little bit about what his foundation was. So that's just the background. Now, in 1954, I'm about 18 years old, I guess, and he set up a painting studio in Greenwich Village, and shortly after that, he sought out his first apprenticeship. A sculptor was recommended to him, Alfred Van Loen, who was also in the village. And Van Loen produced terracotta and plaster works, and that's what Richard was interested in at first. Yeah, so he worked with him for a few years, and then in 1959, Van Loen recommended him to l'Accademia di Belle Arti in Firenze in Florence, Italy. And he went there for a year, studied sculpture and painting there, and then later, through a mutual friend, he went to Paris to meet Alberto Giacometti. And I believe that these experiences really solidified his devotion to sculpture. He returned to New York in the early 60s and set up to work in plaster and terracotta. And his first exhibitions were in Rhys Paley's Auger d'Art galleries in San Francisco in 68 and in Soho in New York in 69. And it was around that time that he met his wife, Kay Goodall. And they married, and then shortly after they moved to Provincetown in 1969. And once on the Cape, he became absorbed in the art community and responded with great productivity and a creative streak that continued right to the end. So, back to the artwork a little bit. This is a monoprint that he made that's really related to his sculptural forms. This is another resin piece here, and you can see how he would take one visual element and with him to the new medium. And so, even though he was switching around with mediums, he was integrating his visual vocabulary amongst all these various mediums. So that's an interesting, very interesting way to work. So his first body of work in Provincetown was what he called the negative dimensional form series. So you can understand how that works. So these faces were made from molds, and then he reversed it and got that negative form and used that as a design element. So he would cast from live models, make plaster molds from live models. And then he would take those mother molds and make rubber molds for casting in resin. And later he could use those same mother molds and make them in molds for casting in bronze. So he really would get a lot out of everything. He would just wring every creative ounce out of everything he did. So in Provincetown, he was working with the resin, but it was tedious, time-consuming, and even though the results were beautiful, it was a little bit problematic. The resin dust is toxic, and it's particularly noxious for an artist that has asthma too, on top of everything. So he stopped working in that medium, and in 1975, with his wife Kay, their daughter was just newly born, and they moved to San Francisco Bay Area. And once there, he immediately got hooked up with the Marin County College there and started working with bronze and studying casting and foundry techniques. And he embarked on a new creative phase of work at this time. And he returned to Provincetown every summer, but he split his time between the two coasts until around 1988, when his daughter was grown and off to college or so. And then he continued to live in Provincetown year-round. Here's more resin pieces. Let's see. So it's very intriguing because of the transparency and the translucency. You can see the forms from both sides, negative and positive, and that's what made them so attractive. And then he could tint here's a Norma Holt photograph of Richard Pepitone and his daughter looking at one of the resin sculptures. This was at the Fine Arts Work Center right in the early days when they had just bought the Pearl Street place. Well, and the bronze, this is a bronze plaque that he did probably in San Francisco. And here's a stylized form.
Got to get you water.
Thank you, yeah. I'm croaking here like a frog. I hope I don't croak like Richard did. Yeah, thank you, Ben. Yeah, so here's another example of this body form fragment cast in bronze, but it was from one of his molds that he reworked. And then, of course, the patinas and everything. And this is another bronze that he built up out of a variety of things to make the mold and then cast them as a wall hanging. and again, another bronze that was created using the molds that he had made for the resins too. But then he also used these fragments of faces and things, and then he added to it with these tree ornament and things like that, and leaf ornaments. And they also had a fabrication side, wasn't all casting, and so this was bronze, but he made it out of, assembled it together, and he also would work with found copper objects, carving them up, cutting them up, and patining them in various colors. Yes. So he's watching again. This time it's a self-portrait, another of his self-portraits, and it's interesting. He started out as a painter, and but when he came to Provincetown, he never said he was a painter. He never told anybody he was a painter or anything like that. And I always knew that he had a good hand, and I'd see some of his drawings, and I'd say, like, Richard, you got that. You got that. And he would always discount. He was always a little bit shy about his own two-dimensional painting style, and I didn't even know how he started, but I just kept encouraging him because I thought he was on the right track with it, and so he kept up with that two-dimensional visual art, interspersed throughout everything else that he was doing. So, but for artists who rely on their production for survival, sculpture is really a challenge, because galleries have limited storage space. Collectors usually have less floor space than wall space. And so Richard had to become inventive. He adapted it. He was good at that. And he could find a medium or a technique and set about his own course of discovery. Like Ben was saying, he would seek out experts in any kind of field and just kind of shadow them for as long as he could to glean every ounce of information about any particular style, graphic sensibility, technique. And meanwhile, his imagery, he kept expanding his imagery and yet integrating that imagery with all of his other materials. So for instance, even taking one painting and then redoing it in a different way is something that a lot of artists wouldn't necessarily think to do, because you think, oh, I've made it once, it's done, now let me think of something else. Well, no, he would take one thing and then twist it and tweak it a little bit more. And meanwhile, he's always drawing. So this kind of overall drawing like this, it's legitimized by Pollock and all the Abex people who treated the whole space as one field. But even, it's a little hard to tell from the slide, but this is dozens and dozens of figures, lines, overlaying each other and integrating to make an even composition. And then meanwhile, he would always, he loved people, and he was always interested in who you were, what you were doing, and other people, and so he was always drawing them too, or sketching them too, and a lot of times he'd do his heroes. Here's Picasso, of course, and then he would do the portraits, but this is a portrait on a ceramic plate, right? And then there's another portrait that was a print. He worked with Michael Mazer at the Work Center for a while and learned a lot about monoprinting and monotype. And so here's a variation of the same plate, but completely different treatment. And then he'd be inventive with backgrounds and overprintings, and he would keep these trends going in between his sculptural work, and sometimes simultaneously. And it's amazing. There's another plate drawing. So let's see. So he would change, he would have a run, like, and he would be forced to change, like, for health reasons, he had to stop doing polyester resin, and then for money and equipment reasons, he stopped doing bronze casting for a while, and so he would always pick something else up. So he went back to ceramics, which was one of his early root things, and reconnected in Provincetown with a lot of the ceramic artists at Castle Hill and Truro Center of the Arts. And he helped to establish a raku kiln there, and he used that to the fullest degree. And he did a lot of ceramic work then. This is a drawing, actually, it's another type of monoprint. This is called the Holy Man, but with the same plate, he also made that kind of a print too. And then this is another monoprint, but it's more like a painting than anything else, And you can see, I thought that he was all right, and tried to make him feel good about that. This is a installation shot from the show. So there's a collage on the upper right there. There's strips of paper, and the lower piece is also collaged. And while the works on the left are drawings. Okay. So. And then another. So he went through ceramics, and continued to work with ceramics and printmaking. And then when he'd get the money or the connections, he'd go back to bronze. When Jack Carney's assistant John Keith set up a foundry in Provincetown, he started working with him too. This is a woodcut monotype, and another drawings, and then it would really work the drawing and work it with color. His creativity was like just unstoppable. So, and the struggles and trials of his childhood were past, but Richard was still plagued with multiple recurring health issues throughout his life. I mean, Cat has 9 lives. Richard had 99 lives, and thank God, he ran as long as he did. I mean, many times we thought we would lose him, but he never succumbed. He always he struggled also with the eternal Provincetown problems of housing, studio space. He had to move his house and his studio all too often, but if he ever suffered from depression about these challenges, it never showed. I mean, I think because, as Ben alluded to, he would let that steam off. He wouldn't let, and he would erupt like a volcano, and then everything's fine. Oh yeah, but that maybe that was his secret. But he stared it down. He persevered, and he never lost his love of life. He poured all his resilience into making art. He rejoiced in discovery and experimentation, and he would attack each new medium or method with the seriousness and focus of a laboratory science. He's constantly asking questions, researching, talking to people, finding out who knows this, who knows that. Or talking about materials and techniques. He produced a significant body of ceramic artwork and dove headlong into works on paper, monotype collage, and his vocabulary, his imagery, he would carry through to all the various mediums. As his longtime friend Salvador Del Deo observed, he was rather unique in the art world. He was an artist to the very ends of his fingers, and to his heart. And he didn't really have to go to formal study because he had it already. Now, it extended to every part of his life. And despite his obstacles, he still maintained a healthy outlook, which extended to his own person and even to the way he dressed. So here he's wearing, as Benton said, he's wearing his own merch. That's a shirt that is from one of his drawings, and then that jacket is using as a motif of his too. And but it was always stylish, and I like to emulate that a little bit. And so we were always having a running discussion about it. Well, he had this shirt that was multicolored and multi-patterned, and it was I just thought, Richard, that's a great shirt. That's what he says. Yeah, I want to paint you in that. And so we were running that with a joke for about 5 or 6 years till we finally got him pinned down in the studio, and I made a painting of him. And I don't have it in the slideshow, but it is now in the Museum of the Cape Cod, this museum here, permanent collection, right? So, and but that was a fun time. Anyway, the other thing that he liked to do was cook, and well, okay, let's look at some art for a while. This is a little small. No, one of his favorite motifs was this, what he called the marine. So here he's got fish and tadpoles or what have you, like they're swirling around, and this is a monotype kind of on ceramic. I mean, he treated a slab of clay like a piece of paper, only he didn't bake the paper, but he would bake the clay. And here's he would integrate sometimes his metal work with ceramic, and then the same marine image that you see. Again, he had this phase where he would just find found objects. You go find a found object. It's not a found object till you find it. He would come up with all these cast off pieces, and so all this bronze work. Some of it was a tank maybe, but then he'd put it all together and carve and cut and bend and weld and patina, and he'd do a lot of utilitarian things. Like this is a lamp. Here's a table made of that industrial plate, and then the base for that table is a technique that Richard kind of pioneered, if not invented, because in Provincetown there was a local welder, Clarence Casurgis, who had a big welding shop. And Richard was always got to be really good friends with Clarence, and then his son Mike, who took over, and because Richard was always working with metal and welding, and when he discovered that Casurgis had some sort of machine that could twist bars of iron and steel, he came up with this idea of kind of braided wire and things, and you can kind of see down here, down in this corner, these twisted wires, and so he would make lots of those, and then use them as sculptures and bases for his other sculptures. Very creative, and there they are, hard at work. Now here's something that, again, what I loved is how he would take one idea and translate it to a different medium. So here we have these face fragments, kind of emerging from the plane, and these happen to be cast in clay. They're ceramic, but he would also do the same thing in bronze, and that was very interesting. And sometimes he'd just have just the one piece, but a lot of times he would make this narrative series like that. And another of his favorite motifs was the horses and horsemen, and so he would make stencils and forms and then really work it. So this is basically a painting, which is part of the show. It's upstairs, and but he was inspired by that almost primitive kind of imagery, but then he would put it together in such a great way. Now, one day he was walking on the beach and he saw a few cast-off oars, and weathered, beaten-up wooden oars, and took them home and stood them up in the studio, and they started talking to him. I'm sure. And that became a whole new world for him, and so he started carving them and making them into figures and working them. Here's the one with the egg held aloft, and then when he ran out of, people usually don't throw their oars away, and they're hard to come by, and so when he ran out of wooden oars, he started casting them in bronze, and he teamed up with Berta Walker, who and that's what we were struggling with earlier. Berta, my computer wouldn't read through this thing, and I have the photo. There's a couple photos that didn't make it in here, and one of them is, you have to go to Provincetown now to see it. We've probably already seen it a million times. Right at the head of Macmillan Wharf, in the little park there, there's the three bronze oars, very similar to this, that Berta had.
Homage to the fishermen.
Yes, homage to the fishermen, and it's now part of the town collection.
One of the first public sculptures in town.
Yes, exactly. Well, so that motif, though, he kept talking to him, obviously, and so here's he translated it into a smaller, and they're not oars anymore, but they're still kind of elongated figures in a kind of relationship. These could be, positioned in a variety of ways, and then here's a similar response, which could be This was patented bronze too. And here's the man now in his last studio out at the Commons in Provincetown, where he worked there and sort of became a mentor to all the other artists that were working there, and they loved him. And this was right towards the end of his life, where he just kept on producing and working. And he also spent a lot of time working with monoprints. He teamed up with Vladimir Schuster of the Funk and Schuster Fine Art Printing in Provincetown. It's a brand new contract printing shop. And Richard just loved it. Vlad let him experiment, and it was a match made in heaven when those two got together, because they produced an immense amount of work together, and a lot of it's in here. Now here is the social side of Richard. He loved cooking. He loved people. That's him when he first came to Provincetown, shingling the beachcombers. He loved the girls. Did I say he loved the girls? No, I think I meant it. He loved the girls, right? Oh no, he really loved the girls. And he loved eating and wining and dining and cooking for everybody. And but he still kept working. He never stopped. He never stopped working. Oh, here's a whole slew of ceramic things that like were supposed to be earlier in the show, but the technical issues. Anyways, the ceramic vases that he painted with a lot of his figures, painted in paint. It's glazed, but treat it like painting, and then here's some relief that he added on to. Here's a motif that he used, made in clay, and but then he repeated it in another form. He was harking back to his bronze face fragments when he made these ceramic pieces, but he glazed them to look like they were bronze. And then he did a lot of ceramic work and some utilitarian work. There's a glasses, painted glasses. These are ceramic pieces. Here's just fired, no glazing, but one of his favorite motifs was, like the Don Quixote, the horse and rider, and the sleepwalker. And here's another horseman one. This is we're not sure how he got the color on there, but some kind of did he slump that in, or was that just cold?
I think it's reverse painting inside.
Reverse paint, okay. This is also did a lot of stained glass work, and here's a stained glass triptych that again repeats one of his favorite motifs, the sleepwalker. And then here are some stained glass windows. The center of this has that's slumped glass, right?
Yeah.
That has a relief, so it's molded glass of two faces. And this is another experimental glass piece. Another stained glass window. And here's a glass fused and then mounted on a cigar box, which was a lot of people were painting cigar boxes, but not too many people were fusing glass and making it, and more graphic work. He was always drawing and sketching and monoprinting. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, there's another collage here. The somnambulists again. This is one of his favorite combinations. It's a drawing that he printed over and then redrew over, and it's a unique piece. As is this, it's kind of a combination piece. And this one is collage, cut paper, and did dozens of these. Here's the bears, which these were molded ceramic, terracotta ceramic, and molded and fired, and Misha Richter, the younger, loved them, and he acquired them from Richard, and what Richard said, and this was as Richard was dying at the Seashore Point, and he was in the hospital bed, and we come to visit him, and Richard said to Misha, they're not done yet. They're not done, because I gotta make 3 cups. I gotta make 3 cups. You bring me some clay tomorrow. You bring me the clay tomorrow. I gotta make those cups right now. Right now. I mean, he was just like, almost his last words, really. And then here's another fanciful figurine, and his lovely daughter, Michelle, who really is a model for artist legacy. I mean, any family member who's, and Bert and I have talked about this nonstop, but when an artist passes away, it's or when the elephant dies, who's cleaning up, and it's really complicated job, and usually 9 times out of 10 it's mishandled and everybody loses, and but Michelle has been the opposite. She's been spectacular at helping to maintain the artistic integrity and the vision of her father, and on reflection, this is named Reflection. On reflection, this is one of the last pieces that Richard did at Funkenschuster. It's a relief print that he had made and used in a different way, and then brought it over to Vladimir and figured out how to make it work in a new way, and Richard loved it, and so thank you, Richard.
Thank you so much, Bill. We pulled the painting that Bill did of Richard in that fanciful shirt that we'd like to show you. Can you bring that down? Yeah, we'll turn on the pump. We'll see.
Come over here. Where you're right. Then more to your right.
They're gonna turn on the lights.
Now raise it up.
They're gonna hit the lights here.
Now lift it up.
Can you see?
Yeah, great. Yeah. There. Stop. There, stop. Right, there.
See if we can line up the faces. That's it. Let's have some fun.
There you go.
There we go.
Wait. Stay
Just pretend it's gin. Hey, look.
Probably yours. I'd see it.
So please stick around, enjoy the exhibition.
Have any questions? Or
Yeah, that's
do you have any ammunition?
I actually have something that occurred to me that I've completely forgotten about. When, do I have to stand up or can you hear me? We had an opening for Richard on his birthday right after 9/11. By that I mean 3 days. The opening was like on the 14th, it was that Friday. And it was up to Richard to decide, could he, under the very emotional times, open, and he wanted to, and it was beautiful because we had his show inside, and we had candles all along the front of the gallery outside, so that there was a vigil and a creativity honoring 9/11. And you might know, listening to your story that you're talking about with him, you might know it would have been Richard.
Yeah.
Somehow he's the symbol of all of that. There were many more, but that was, I completely forgot that story.
Does anyone else have a question or even a remembrance that I'd like to share before? Yes.
Yeah, I have one. Hi, I'm Marcy Markey. I was in Provincetown. It was in 1987 on a sabbatical. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
And I was walking on the street. It was winter, and there was this person. It was almost like a body, and I went up to him, and he was having trouble breathing, and he was just stunned. So I said, "Are you okay?" I'm all right. I said, "I'll just stay with you." So he got a little bit better, and then I said, "I'll walk you. Wherever you're walking, I'll walk with you." So walked slowly, and it was on Brewster Street. So, and I didn't know who he was. I just said, "I am." So then got him up the stairs into where he was living, and he said, "Sit down." I said, "Okay." I sat down. He sat down. So he said, "Do you want a cup of tea?" I said, "No." "Then call 911. So I did. They came in. I left. I had no idea on that one, and that was how I first met Richard.
Yes.
Clarence Walker. Berta knows that Richard and I had a lot of war stories together. We grew up in New York. Greenwich Village.
Can I hear you? Make sure I can hear you.
We grew up in Greenwich Village. We crawled through all the galleries together. A lot of the artists that I knew. Well, it turns out that this woman who met him, I threw on my 50th birthday in 1989, I threw a big party, had about 250 people there. And Richard comes in with these two tall women compared to him. Blonde, one a French Canadian, and Madame. And that's how I met her. One other story. I remember Berta, Richard, and I were in a car together. We were going somewhere. I used to take him places to pick up some of his castings. We'd go all over the place together. And we were sitting there one day, and Richard says, "Jesus, God, I apologize. I know it's not like colic." And I said, "Yeah, you do." So Berta says, "Yeah, well, there's a way to cure that problem. Stop having garlic in the morning." But I have many of the pieces there. I have one with my former wife. Because Richard used to love to make the models. He used my former wife as one. And I have one of the sculpted pieces. And I have maybe 10 or 12 of his pieces in the house. But we really went back. and I'm so happy you did this. I had to come.
Wow.
Although the damn GPS took me backwards. Thank you.
I just have a real quick one too. I'm Will Heron. I'm Berta Walker's nephew. Hi all. Just a really funny story that made me think about. On my 16th birthday, he gave me a ceramic torso of a woman at the hip size, you know, and there was many laughs about that, being that I was 16 at the time, and that photograph of him and Michelle at the Fine Arts Work Center, when we used to summer here when I was a kid with my mom and dad, our house was always rented out. 622 commercial was rented out to various families, and so we would stay at the Fine Arts Work Center, and where his bin was right across from where we were staying. So in the evening, we would go out and sit on the edge of the walkway upstairs and watch him do his nudes, you know, as kids, you know, like, it was like our entertainment, you know, watching it. And so when he gave me that torso, we had a good laugh about it because I said, I think I know that model. And then, here it is many, many, many moons later. Last year, I had the fortunate experience of purchasing the bronze of that exact torso. And so I have them both.
That's great. Taught you sex ed, and he taught anybody something.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, let's see it all in person upstairs.
Yeah, thank you.